sweet. Is that just me being loud because I am a loud mouth, or is that the mic on? Good? All right, good. All right, guys. Hey, good morning. My name is Andrew. Let me get this pulled up here. I have been coming to the church here for quite some time. You ready? Okay, so this is what Matt told me I had to do. You guys ready? Okay. I'm just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. See, got him going, though. There we go. Guys, good morning. My name is Andrew. I've been coming to the church now for a long time, since about 6th grade. I've actually been a part of Vineyard, and then have had the pleasure to actually teach a while back. It's been, I think we figured out first service about four years now. So you're going to hear some of the cobwebs shaking off, so give me some grace here in that regard. But super excited for anybody new here today. Is anybody who here has been coming to Vineyard, I would say, or I shouldn't say Vineyard anymore, coming with Vineyard and Cornerstone and all that for, let's say, 5 years or more? 5 years or more? 10 years or more? 10 years or more? All right, we got some troopers in here. So, well, guys, hey, I appreciate you letting me come up and teach with you guys today. It's going to be we're going to take a journey here. So, who here has been, over the last couple weeks, has been here for the altar series that we've been doing? Yeah? Okay. So, we've been teaching about altars, and the slide will come up here on the screen. Sacred encounter with God. So this has been a series that we've been kind of touching on in regards to what are all the different altars that have been built in the Bible in regards to people that have had a sacred encounter with God and people that have had a chance to meet God through some of the ways that God's kind of shown up and show off in their life. So as I started to kind of think about this, I really started to ask the question. It was really just wrestling with this. So we've been talking last week. You guys actually jumped on a journey with Matt about Jacob's first altar in Genesis 33. And so as I started kind of thinking through that, and then Abraham, I started to think, where was the first place that I ever met with God? That was kind of one of the questions that came to my brain as I was thinking about some of these altars and how these people met with him. Was just, what was the first time that you ever met with God? What was that like physically? What was it like spiritually, mentally, emotionally, that kind of thing? And so I started to think about that, and actually I'm going to go ahead and pull up some photos here on the screen. So back when I was in high school, I had the chance, Matt actually at the time, Matt was our youth pastor at the time, so that'll age him a little bit. Matt's like, what? I think he's about the age of Jacob, like 80, 90, going on 100. Got that on camera, buddy. So, no, just kidding. Matt was actually our youth pastor back in the day. We had a chance to actually partner with another Vineyard church in Costa Rica, which is cool. And what we did is we did a lot with them. Probably about 5 years in a row, we would go there. We did everything from, their church was like actually a little bit like, we're talking a little small, tiny shack, to by the end of it, like they had a roof, they had a building. I think they had about 100 people coming by the end of it. It was awesome. And we had a chance. It was called Monte de Dios. And we had a chance. I don't think he's in that picture. His name's Delin. He actually ran a program, which is super cool. He had some people from Ohio, some people from Costa Rica, and he would do like a year-long mission journey with these guys, and they would partner with different churches, that kind of thing. So the next couple of slides, those are some fun slides that we'll pull up here of some of the stuff we did. That was just some of the skits we did, some of the work projects were coming up next, and then had a couple of fun days at the end. But as I started to think back, kind of this whole idea of the altars and like what was the first time that I ever met with God, I started to think back to this moment here in Costa Rica. The next slide was, we were actually on a mountain. It was a message that the guy, Delin was his name, he delivered. It was about, he was actually teaching on the message of Galatians 2:20. If you guys ever read that? It talks about dying to self and living a new life in Christ. And so he taught us a little dance that stuck with us. So it was die to self, live a new life with Christ. Die to self. Come, guys, I can't be the only one dancing. I think, all right, guys, you guys are not awake this morning, so stand up. We're gonna have everybody do the dance, okay? Because you guys are gonna remember this by the end of this message, okay? I'm gonna have you guys, next week I'm gonna say, someone do the dance for me, and on command. All right, it's die to self, live a new life with Christ. Die to self, live a new life with, okay, you guys are perfect. Go ahead and sit down, thanks, guys. So, I know, you guys are feeling silly in church. You guys don't want to embarrass. I get it. But the whole thing that really, it was just a silly, funny dance that he talked about it was Galatians 2:20 of dying to self, living a new life. And the whole message that he was trying to send was, no matter where you come from, no matter what like your background is, at the end of the day, it's a new life. And so I thought that was a big point. So I had a chance. I grew up in the church my whole, from the time I was a baby. My parents, they were actually they were some way involved. We did like Awanas back in the day. We did, we did the middle school, high school. They were involved in some way, shape, or form of doing a lot of the, just the kids' classes. But this was really the first time I think we can all somewhat think about a time where even if you grew up in the church, you had a personal encounter with God where he just really wrecked you in the best way. You wrestled with him, and it was here that, really, it was really here that you first decided for yourself that this was going to be your journey versus something that was decided for you, right? And if you haven't, well, then today's the day. Welcome. Welcome to church. But that was a really big point in kind of talking about this altar series with Jacob, was there was a transition in Jacob's life, and this is what we're going to talk about this here in a second, that Jacob had multiple stages of his life, and there was a certain point in his life that he made a personal transition for himself, right, to decide that he was going to constantly pursue Jesus or God personally, excuse me. So I want to go to hit on that a little bit. The series that we've been talking about is Jacob's second altar is what today's going to be about. You guys last week kind of dove in with Jacob's first altar back in Genesis 33. So now we're going to dive into a second altar that he had and kind of some of the transitions that he went through. And before we really get into that, there's four stages of Jacob's life I really, really want to mention, because I think that in some way, shape, or form, I think we can all relate to Jacob's story, at least just a little bit. And I think it's important to kind of key in on some of these like key points of his life. And so you can write this on your handout, is the first one. The first one, he really lived up to his name as the deceiver. So for those that don't know, Jacob's name physically meant to grasp the heel, right? So you guys talked about it last week with Matt, where when he was born, he literally grabbed the heel of his brother, stole his birthright, ran away. But it was still in that point, his mom had some play in the fact of, hey, go do this, go do that. He was kind of and somewhat following suit, but still living up to the name of the deceiver, right? So that, I think, was a big point of his life. And something I really want to hit on as I was kind of doing this message was, if you look at the timeline of Jacob's life, he actually, he really didn't get started with a lot of the stuff we know about him until he was about 70. And so you got to think, like, the first 70 years of his life, he was kind of labeled as this deceiver, his name, right, that he lived up to. And which is, I mean, for most of us, that's our entire life now, right? So let alone 70 years, I mean, this was a big portion that he lived up to this label. So then the second one that really kind of keyed in on his stage of his life was the runner. So Jacob ran away from his problems that he created ultimately, right? Like he created it, he stole the birthright, he stole the blessing from his brother, which at that point was a massive deal, literally taking everything that, I mean, his brother should have gotten and stole it and then ran and dipped, said, sorry, go figure it out. And so that was a big deal. And then ultimately he did that to run away from his problems he created, and then got to the place he was going and ended up what? Being deceived himself by his uncle Laban, right? He ended up being deceived by his uncle Laban, ended up going there, ended up working for 7 years to work for the wife that he never actually, that he was supposed to get. Then he had to work another 7 years to actually get the wife he got. And one of the things I really noticed in that whole timeline, right? So he worked 14 years to actually get the wife he was promised, right? And then what did he do? I think Jacob, the deceiver, would have left. He would have left. He would have taken what he got, and probably even before that, realistically, he probably would have, the first 7 years, said, well, this isn't fair. Let me go get what's mine and then leave and dip. Instead, he stayed another 6 years. He stayed 6 more years to watch over the flock of the person that deceived him originally, which that whole transition there, that's a big point, because ultimately I think what that kind of hones in on is Jacob never let his past decide what he was going to be, right? So just kind of keying on that is that he had 20 years working for that. So then now at this point, now he gets his wife. You can go ahead and pull this up. So Galatians 6:9. The one thing I want to hone in on is the 6 years that he really worked for Laban's family was a lot of patience and obedience, which is stinking hard. I want you guys to think about somebody that talked bad about you or somebody that did you wrong. I'm sure all of us can think of somebody. And imagine just having to say, yep, I'm going to go work. I'm still going to work for you. I'm still going to live in that space and just continue to stay here, even though, because this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what's right. And so he did, he stayed. And so it says in Galatians 6:9, let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap and we will not give up, which is exactly what Jacob did. So then at that point, now he's got his family, that kind of thing. Now he's got the third stage of his life that I want to hit on is the grabber. He grabbed onto God by the Jordan River and he started to realize his dependence on God. So we start to really see a massive transition in Jacob here from that point. And then the last stage of his life was to be grabbed. If you actually continue to read on past Genesis 35 that we're going to hit on today, Joseph comes in the picture, goes to Egypt, that kind of thing, and he says, hey, come see me. But what he wouldn't do is he wouldn't go there unless God gave him the approval to do that. So at that point, we really see Jacob being grabbed by God. He really wanted to be pursued, and he did. And one of the things I will tell you is that through that transition, you're talking about 140 years here of Jacob's life that all this went down. He never let the first 70 decide what the last 70 were going to become, right? He let that transition actually rock his world and actually transform, and now he became a massive leader that we still talk about today. And one of the things I do still want to highlight, guys, is that God that was still there, that walked with Jacob through those 140 years, he's still the same God, right? Still the same God. So that's a lot. That's what we're going to be talking about today, guys. If you will turn with me to your Bibles in Genesis 35, that's where we're going to land today. This is going to be talking about Jacob's second altar on after he left, had his family. Now he really reunited with his brother, and he's trying to figure out what's next. This is kind of where we end up. So Genesis 35, 1-7 says, then God said to Jacob, go up to Bethel and settle there, and build an altar there to God who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God who answered me on the day of my distress and who has been with me wherever I have gone. So they gave Jacob all their foreign gods they had and all their rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell on the towns all around them, so that no one pursued them. God, Jacob, and all the people who were with him came to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan. There he built an altar, and he called the place of El Bethel, because it was there that God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. Skip over to verse 9. It says, after Jacob returned to Padam Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. God said to him, your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel. So he named him Israel. And God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac I give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you. Then God went up from him at the place where he had talked with him. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He had also poured oil on it. Jacob called the place where God had talked to him El Bethel. Let's pray. Father, I don't know what you're going to say today, but I just pray that whatever message you're trying to send, whatever it is that you want us to hone in on through this message through Jacob, I just pray that we listen, we hear you, we pursue you. And I just pray that, God, you are the same God that you were there back then as you are now. So I just pray that we see that. I pray that we believe that. And I pray that anybody that hasn't had a chance to accept that they do that. That you are so good. And so we love you, we trust you, and we give it in your name. Amen. All right. Point number 1. You can write this on your handout. God reveals himself to Jacob because of his persistency and perseverance. God reveals himself to Jacob because of his persistency and perseverance. So notice, guys, in verses 6 and 7, this is a big part of Jacob's redemption story here, right? This is ultimately an altar of redemption, if we're being honest. Is Jacob and all the people with him came to Luz, and in the land of Canaan, there he built an altar, and he called the place El Bethel, because it was there God revealed himself when he was fleeing from his brother. God set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with him, and he poured out a drink offering on it, He also poured on it. Jacob called the place where God talked with him El Bethel. So, kind of again, hitting on the timeline here. Notice that just because, so his 70 years and his, living in that label of the deceiver, he didn't let that become his identity, okay? And he literally, he lived a lot of trials and struggles and that kind of thing. Ultimately, we read all throughout him, but just think about even the context of where this was at, right? So you got to think, he's, at this point, overall, so Jacob and his whole family, right? His dad, he's feeling the emotional pain of, okay, now I feel like I deceived my dad, deceived my brother, so now I have really no family, okay? I go to the one place where I think I have family, and they lie to me, and they deceive me. So now he's feeling like, crap, I'm all alone, okay? What do we do now? So, really then he's still, really his journey of wrestling with God, he meets with God, he wrestles with God, feels like he's all alone, then he goes to this place, pursues this woman, still kind of feels alone, still chasing her, didn't get the right, all in all, it was a lot of, Jacob was just figuring it out. His whole life was a series of mess ups and figure out, mess up, figure out, and then ultimately God still said, I'm still here for you, I'm still gonna come after you. And so I think it's really, one thing just to highlight is, no matter the disappointments, that it was just the idea that Jacob never let his mistakes become his identity and define his future. And I think that's a big point. Notice in Romans 5:3 says, not only so, but we glorify in our sufferings, because we know that sufferings produce perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. So that, I don't know about you guys, it's tough for me. Like whenever I'm in a season of somebody did me wrong, I feel like that I thought it was going to be one way and it was another way. Yes, is there a time where probably it comes back to center and it's like, okay, what's going on? There's a reason for this, but still there's that gut reaction of like, why is this happening? It's frustrating. It's hard. It makes me, it's I don't know about you guys, but it's like if I feel like it should have been this way and it wasn't this way, expectations versus reality, it's that feeling of accepting that is tough, right? And so I'm going to challenge you guys, if you feel like, and we'll put this on the screen, if you feel like mistakes in your past are going to define what's next, you're wrong. And let this story be that. Let this story be that reminder that whatever that looked like, he had 70 years of living in that identity of being the deceiver and then the runner. But he still didn't let that become his identity. And so, and one thing I want to highlight here is, okay, so now he gets to the place where he's going. He feels like, okay, now I'm actually doing the things I should be doing, working for my uncle, this is what we're done. I forgave, right? Think about the emotion of like, oh, I worked for 7 years. Now I have to forgive, work another 7 years, and then still 6 more years say, I'm just going to show love and grace, and I'm going to stay here and watch over the flock of somebody that I felt like did me wrong. One of the things that I think that God really highlights to Jacob in the first few chapters here is that he went back to the place where he first met God. We talked about at the beginning. He went back to the place where he first met God. Notice in Genesis 35:5, he says, Then God said to Jacob, go up to Bethel and settle there and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. It says in verse 7, there he built an altar and he called the place El Bethel, because it was there that God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. And then in 9, after Jacob returned from Padan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. Guys, God's a consistent God who will show up and show off. With this transition though, a lot of it was Jacob's mindset, right? It was Jacob's mindset of he needed to remember that going back to the place where God first met him, back when he first left his brother, was he switched his mindset. He switched his mindset and began to see the challenges as ways to grow closer to God. And yeah, I was talking to some of the guys after first service. This was a hard message for me to write. This was a really hard message. I think I spent the first day I started to kind of sit down. Matt asked me to come up and teach this. There was a reason. We talked about it, and it was there, as you saw in some of the photos at the beginning. There was a season of my life where I was really, really chasing God pretty hard. I was doing it. I was all in. So we did the stuff in Costa Rica. After I graduated high school, I actually left and went over to South Africa and did some mission work there for a little bit. Came back, got all involved in the church, and then probably for the last, I'd say, year and a half, there's been some distance. There's been some inconsistencies with that. And so when I came to write this, it was very much how am I going to deliver this message in a sense where it's like we're in a season of like, this isn't, I'm not living this out. I'm not living out the message of that I think that realistically God can show up and show off where I'm at, and how in the world am I going to ask anybody else to do that? And so he took me back to that place where I first met him. I think I spent 14 hours the first day I sat down and actually tried to do this, like literally just straight. And it was like, yeah, I remember doing that. That feeling of like, I have no idea what's going to be said, but God does. And so guys, I'm gonna challenge you. You can go past this next one, go past Genesis 35 and go up to the next one, Kenny. Guys, it was a challenge for me to remember this. God had to teach me, why is this so stinking hard for me to remember where I was when I met him? And so it was the mindset flip of all this stuff that's happening is, why is this happening to me versus why is this happening for me? And I will challenge each and every one of you guys, if you feel like that you're in a season right now where it's like, hey, I'm not really sure like how God's going to show up through this, because I mean, realistically, like maybe I haven't done the right thing, or maybe I haven't, maybe you have. Maybe you feel like, hey, I'm doing everything right and he's just not showing up. Go back to the place where you first met him. Go back to that season. Go back to where you were mentally, relationally. You know, again, I'm not going to just fly over to Costa Rica and sit on a mountainside, right? But I can remember what it was like to get up in the morning and be quiet and just rest and sit there and let him talk, versus me saying, I'm just going to do it in my car ride over to work. I'll pray. I did it. No. Just sit down and relax. So point number one. God revealed himself to Jacob because of his persistency and perseverance. Point number two. God reveals himself to Jacob because of his consistency. So as I started to kind of think about this, I was like, persistency and consistency, that's like the same thing, right? What's persistency? But it was really kind of defining that. Persistency, I would say, is the pursuit of figuring out who God is and how we get there. Consistency is staying there consistently, of chasing him day in and day out, right? Which, here's what I'll tell you. So there's a book, and I'll reference it here later, but one of the books I've been reading right now is called it talks about the slowing life down. Overall, it's a phenomenal book. It's actually called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. If anybody's ever heard of it, it's by John Mark Comer. And what he talks about in that is motivation will get you started, but discipline and habits is what will keep you there after the motivation wears off. So, because at the end of the day, it's great to come to church. It's great to get jacked up and be like, yeah, I can do this. This is awesome. And that was the season I was in, right? Remember this, guys. So 70 years, right? Think about a lifespan. 70 years, Jacob lived in this season of running away from his problems, creating problems. And then now all of a sudden, like overnight, he's just supposed to flip his mindset? No, it took the 20 years for him to change. It took the 20 years of him working for something and being deceived and being told, and then having to forgive and then still sticking around. It took that 20-year time span for him to change. And so this is what we're going to talk about in our second point, is some of the ways of consistency and chasing him and all that kind of thing. But just recognize that, guys. Like, this is not something where I'm like, hey, guys, next week, it's like, it's not about just getting, it's like next week I expect like you should expect perfection, or even at the end of the day, even sometimes week to week getting better. Sometimes it feels like, well, I haven't grown. It's just doing the things that we know are going to get her closest to Christ. And so one of the big things, though, in that, and it's in verse 1 through 3. He said, "Go to Bethel and settle there and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother." And so Jacob said to his household and all who were there, "Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you and purify yourselves and change your clothes. And then let's go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar, who answered me on the day of my distress, who has been with me wherever I've gone." So let's not forget, this is the same Jacob that deceived, okay? And that this is the same Jacob who, for 20 years, had to forgive and forget and still love. And so, and then, again, I'm trying to think about this whole thing of like, guys, 70, I keep going back to it, but 70 years of this, and then another 20 years of just forgiving and forgetting and staying consistent. So it reminded me of like, okay, what's a challenge that's out there nowadays? There's tons of them. You've got all these different diets, you've got all these different workout challenges, all these kind of things. But there's a challenge that I actually had came across. I'll go and pull up on the screen. It's called 75 Hard. If anybody's heard of it. It is exactly what it sounds like. 75 hard. It ain't 75 easy. So it's, for those of you that haven't heard it, it's these 5 challenges, which, to be honest with you, from face value, all of them are unrealistic. So the first one is just follow whatever eating plan you want. Pick it, doesn't matter, count calories, count macros, whatever. Pick a following plan and just stick with it. Second one is 2 workouts a day. You can do that however you want. You could walk, you can bike, you can go to the gym, whatever you want, but one of them has to be outside and you have to do 2 workouts a day. Drink a gallon of water, read 10 pages of a book, and then the last one's take a progress photo. Biggest thing, if you fail one of them in 75 days, you have to start over. So, my question is, what do you think the success rate of this is? Who here can give me a percentage? What do you think the success rate of 75 hard is? Get 2%, anybody else, if I'm looking at this though, realistically, because it's just, hey, it gives you so much freedom to do it though. Work out how you choose, eat how you choose, read whatever book you want. There's no doesn't pin you into this. It's just doing it. Again, would I be crazy to think that maybe 30% of people failed, right? And it's 70% of the population out there can do this, right? Right. Less than 5% is the success rate. Here's my question though. Which one gets people the most? Go ahead and pull that last one up. Pull the rules up. Next one, or go back. So out of the 5 things, out of the 5 things, which one do you think gets people the most? So the follow a diet, okay. Which one do you think gets people the most? I've heard 5 is take a progress photo, follow a diet, 2 workouts a day. Let's not forget, we all are busy, 2 workouts a day ain't fun, right? One of them has to be outside. If you're doing it in wintertime, doesn't matter, still has to be outside, right? Which one do you think gets people the most? Read 10 pages. So what have I told you that the thing that gets people the most, because let's be real, this whole challenge, it really is a mental thing, right? All in all, you're probably spending 2 hours to do the entire thing, right? To do 2 hours to spend the entire thing. The one that gets people the most is take a progress picture. Which realistically, we have our phones on us nowadays, right? And here's the deal. Again, a lot of flexibility. Take a progress photo. You don't have to share that with anybody. You can literally just keep it on your phone. There's nothing that says you have to post this thing and that kind of thing. I could get it, if it became that now. No. You just have to take the photo. So 10 seconds to turn around and take a photo of a progress photo. But it's the one that gets the people the most. Why? Why is that the one that trips people up the most, that makes everybody start over? It's because it's the smallest one. It's the smallest task. We often just forget about it. We say, oh, we'll get it done later. We'll do it later. We wake up, we get going, or we're tired in the morning, maybe we slept in, we're late, we're running late to work, or hey, we got to come to church really fast, we got to go. We'll do it. It's progress. I'll get it done. I'll get it done. And then you get busy with the day, you hang out with the family, you forget, then you fall asleep, and then you just don't do it. Then you wake up and you're like, dang, it's starting over. It's the progress photo. And it's because we overlook the small things. We overlook the things that are small that get us to the end goal. Because we know if we follow this, that at the end of 75 days, we're going to be healthier. So here's my question. If this is 75 days and it's hard to follow these 5 tasks, how hard do you think it is for 75 years for most of us to follow Jesus consistently? Hard. Consistently. Knowing, and realistically, it's tough because the end goal it's intangible. It's faith. That we know that we're at the end of this all, that we know that it's worth it. It's faith. You can't look at it in the mirror. You can't, obviously there's steps along the way to find this, but it's not something that's just easily trackable, right? So it made me think, what are ways that we can stay consistent with God? So if you want to write these on your handout, we'll go through these pretty quick. First one is have a we, not me mentality. That's the first way to stay consistent with God. Have a we, not me mentality. Notice that Jacob, in his text, before he was willing to go build an altar, he told his family, again, same Jacob that was on his own, figuring all of his own stuff out, he told his family, hey, get rid of anything that's impure right now. Get rid of all the gods, they said we gave them our earrings, right? So I was thinking, why in the world would somebody give up their earrings, right? We often think that like these idols that they worshipped, right, were these golden statues and calves and all these kind of things, when at the end of the day, the idols are just what is keeping you at a distance from God. What's keeping you at pursuing this? And to them, having the identity of, well, jewelry makes me look beautiful, it's an idol. So he said, get rid of all your idols, and then we'll go up and build. And so he valued the idea of a we, not me mentality. Welcome to church, guys. Glad you guys showed up. First step, have a we, not me mentality. You guys are here's the first step. And being consistent is doing what you're doing right now. So great job. Second one, eliminate the distractions. Eliminate the distractions. You can go on to, eliminate the distractions is the second way of staying consistent with God. He said, get rid of your foreign gods, get rid of the distractions, okay? Like I said, idols weren't these golden statues, guys, as they were things that were just keeping them at a distance from God. And so here's something I was thinking about today's context now of like, okay, we don't, obviously can we say, yes, get rid of our earrings and this kind of thing and then go build altars? But realistically, I was like, what are some practical things that are real idols today that are keeping us at a distance from God? So I came up with a few here. You can write these down if you'd like. Material possessions. So first one, money, houses, cars. These are easy things to identify. And it says right there in Matthew 6, he says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and not the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So that's an easy one to obviously identify, but here's some tougher ones. Technology and entertainment. 1 Corinthians 6 says, I have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial, but I will not be mastered by anything. So all hey, this season just came out. Oh, great. They just released a couple new episodes on Netflix. Hey, maybe we should sit down and watch all 3 or all 5 or all 10. I'm guilty. All right. Is that keeping me away from being consistent with God because I chose that? Probably. Career and success. Another one that keeps people away. So Matthew 6:33 says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Relationships and approval of others. Galatians 1 says, am I not trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or it says, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. So somebody a long time ago said the same thing, and we're still facing the same challenge today. Shocker. Same God. Last one, self-image and appearance. Easy one to get in the way of having a consistent relationship with God. It says in 1 Samuel, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. They look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So my question to you guys is, what am I idling? What's my idol? What's my thing that is consistently putting a wedge in between me and the Father from staying consistently close? Is it my drive to success to have this big dream, this big goal? Is it to chase, always have the next best entertainment, the next best phone, the next best whatever? Is it to be approval by others? Is it to have the best friendships, the best relationships, the best marriage, what is it? Or is it, hey, my focus is, how can I stay consistently close with God? Is that the question that we ask ourselves every day? I'll go ahead and invite the worship team to come up as we close here. I mentioned it earlier, one of the books that was really, really good that I've been reading lately, it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. If you haven't read it, it's really good. It's John Mark Comer. He says something in that book that struck me between the eyes as I was preparing this. He says, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Because both accomplish the same thing. They keep you at a distance from God. And that hit me pretty hard. Again, for the visionaries in the room, for those that like to start big businesses or those that like to have big goals and big dreams, it's easy to get, lost in the sauce, right? Or it's easy to lay in bed and have my phone and scroll, right? Because I'm just, maybe it just takes me away. I've had a busy day. Let me just take a couple seconds and scroll real quick. Or let me watch this show. They just released three new episodes. We have to watch it. It just got released. I'm sure none of you guys have ever had that thought. But it's tough to do this small, consistent daily wins. And what are those? So a couple practical examples that you can do that are the small, practical ones. Praying daily. Praying daily, guys. We often think that these radical transformations in history in these times, or anybody, is that it's these big events that happen. Oftentimes, it's just the small, consistent things that they did. Pray daily, get in the Word, spend time with the Father for 10 minutes a day. Go and utilize the God Day resources that Matt and Cornerstone put out, and you don't have to do them all. Nobody's saying you have to spend 8 hours a day and it's going to radically transform this. That is persistency, right? Now let's figure out how to stay consistent and do the small wins that stay consistent. God rewards the small things. He rewards the small things. He said in Genesis 35, the land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you. He rewarded the consistency of just showing up and having his family, having a we, not me mentality with his family. So that's going to be point number 2. God revealed himself to Jacob because of his consistency of chasing him.